Hello, you are watching Cloud and 5G Live. Today I'm joined by Bjørn Rønning, General Manager of the Norwegian data center industry. Bjørn, as the General Manager of the Norwegian data center industry, which is a trade association and voice of the data center industry in Norway. A telecom professional, he has worked as an advisor in the national and international digital infrastructure space, including terrestrial and subsea fiber optic networks, data centers, and related digital infrastructure. The Norwegian data center industry represents the players in the ecosystem of the Norwegian data center business, from site developers to builders, solution providers, fiber operators, carriers, and data center operators. So, without further ado, here to deliver his keynote presentation, which will address the question, are sustainable data centers a reality? Please welcome to the stage, Bjørn Rønning.
Thank you very much, Sam, for your kind introduction. I'm very happy to be joining the show, and I hope this is going to be a good conference for all of the attendants and all of the people watching this. So basically, I'm starting off my presentation with the biggest question, which I think many people are asking themselves. Are sustainable data centers a reality? Do they really exist? If you look at the perception of data centers in the public domain, I think the overall impression is that data centers are huge gobblers of energy. You feed energy, lots of energy into the data centers, and then basically what comes out is data. So I'm going to talk through this presentation and talk a little bit about what is sustainability. How do we measure it? What does it really mean that a data center is sustainable? What does it give back to society other than the services we normally reflect to a data centers? So let me take you through a couple of slides what some of my members in the Norwegian data center industry are doing to really put sustainability on the agenda, and also showcase what we are doing here in Norway with a whole complete ecosystem of players which comprises the Norwegian data center industry. So let's start a little bit with talking about what does sustainability really mean. And I think that from a climate perspective, that's probably the most important driver for talking about sustainability. How can we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and how can we make the building process as efficient and sustainable as possible, and also the operation of the data center and also the heat reuse? So I think a good place to start is to talk a little bit about the greenhouse gas protocol. The greenhouse gas protocols includes all the whole life cycle of building and operating and eventually decommissioning a data center. So we start with the different scopes. There are 3 scopes that each scope covers the direct owned emissions, and also the indirect, the purchased emissions, and all other indirect emissions. That basically is all the energy that disappears from the data centers when it's consumed. So let's go through each and all of this. And talking about Norway, we are in an incredible lucky position that if you look at the greenhouse gas protocol scope number 2, which are the indirect or purchased emission from power, from electrical power. Here in Norway, and basically also in the neighboring Scandinavian countries, we are so lucky that we are almost on a 100% carbon-free, emission-free power. So that means that basically scope 2 for the industry now is covered for the data center industry. So everybody who moves their workloads to Norway, they will have the immediate benefit of just having and just purchasing carbon emission free electrical power. That means that the carbon footprint is close to zero. So then that has inspired our members to further look into how can we comprise all the scopes in the protocol. From scope one, what does it take to build a sustainable data center, to prepare the plot of the land to build, how can we purchase emission-free materials to use in our buildings, and also how can we make use of the residual heat that is comprised in the scope number 3. So moving towards the sustainability 2.0, we have defined the term sustainability 2.0. How do we move on, looking forward to the next levels of sustainability? How can we reduce the greenhouse gases? How can we reduce the carbon footprint, and how can we move on and making this really sustainable case for all the data centers to come? And we're also looking at retrofitting the existing data centers and to apply new heat recovery solutions that we can really benefit from also taking into account that we have the large amount and inventory we have of existing inventory of data centers. They can also improve their sustainability towards the sustainability 2.0. So we also look at how can we recycle the materials when you decommission and replace the end-of-life equipment into your data center. How can we make sure that that will be reused and upgraded and upsized so it can be used for further projects? So if you're looking at the sustainable options for the asset as such, that means what should you take into account when you are building your new data center? So here our member bulk data centers, they have made this model which takes into account all of the different aspects of sustainability. That means that from the building standard that you are leaning towards BREEAM standard, for instance, that makes sure that already in the specifications, on the early specification stage, you are taking into account what kind of building materials and building methods are you going to lean on when you are assessing your new data center projects. So as you can see from the presentation here, I won't go into depths of this, but we basically bulk, they are addressing all the aspects and all the levels, from using carbon-free emission for the transportation of material and for the preparation of the plot, and also using green roofs and solar panels to a great extent. If you look at the emergency generators that are usually based today on diesel generators, which are not emission-free, we are looking now to use, how can we use biofuel to fuel the emergency generators? And also on the cooling solutions, how can we make the cooling solutions efficient and really that we can reuse a high quality of the heat that's expelled from the data center. So as you can see here, we are basically doing a very, very thorough analysis on all the components of the building process of a data center, and also we are assessing all the buildings material that they have this environmentally proven declaration, the EPD declaration, that we believe will be more and more prominent in the time to come. As everybody knows, the European Union are now setting strict measures for sustainability for all sectors and for the data centers in particular. And here we are addressing the scope 3 of the greenhouse gas protocol. how can we utilize the waste heat? So the issue for Norway has been that a large amount of the data centers that's built and operated in the Norwegian market are basically located in rural areas, but because it's convenient because it's located close to the energy production sources. That means that we waste very little energy on the transmission lines from the power generators to the actual consumer of the power. So that means that we need to think beyond the scope of heat reuse, which is basically the go-to solution for the European players on the or the continent, or in the UK for that matter, and that's building district heat solutions for reusing the waste heat. We certainly do this in Norway. In Oslo, currently we are heating 5,000 households based on the stack infrastructure asset here in Oslo Centrum, but we are forced to think beyond the district heating limitation. So for rural areas, which, for instance, Green Mountain have a lot of sites in the rural areas, we are looking into how can we reuse the residual heat for instance, food production. And I think that food production is becoming a more and more important part of the whole supply chain that's really challenged these days with the war in Ukraine, and you also have the climate crisis that really puts strain on the fertile areas of today. So how can we enhance the food production by reusing waste heat from data centers? So Green Mountain, which this case is from, they are looking at fish farming. So they use the heat from the data centers to heat the waters for the farmed fish. That means that we can grow the fish at a more sustainable and efficient rate. And also the fish farmers, they can buy the waste heat and they don't need to buy electricity or whatever power to heat to up the temperature sufficiently. So that means that in effect, we should basically talk about a scope 4 of the greenhouse gas protocol, and that's avoided emissions. Because by offering the residual heat to fish farmers or food producers, greenhouse industry, we can actually take away their electricity bill. And that means and as everybody knows, the best way of being sustainable is to not use electricity or any energy. That's the most sustainable. So if we can provide means to avoid other emissions for other industries, I think that's a very good tick in the box. So Green Mountain, they are looking now to go away from throwing away their heat to offer the residual heat to fish farmers. Is more specifically it's trout farming, and they also make plate-sized lobsters. So I think it's a very good. The species are a very good offering for the restaurant market and also for the food market in general. So I think that trying to wrap this up a little bit, really what you need to take into account when you are considering a sustainable data center, there are basically three issues that you need to address. The first one is the asset itself. You need to consider the asset and also consider all the elements of the building process, the planning process and the building process, and also the operation of the asset. You build the asset with sustainable materials. You choose a location where you are prone to have really good access or easy access to renewable power with a maximum amount or the lowest possible carbon footprint. but you also need to comprise the whole ecosystem around you. You need to have a holistic perspective on this, and you also need to, as I mentioned a minute ago, you probably need to make a mental scope for avoided emissions. How can you protect the environment? How can you save other industry or other sectors to reuse or to use electricity, and thereby reduce the carbon footprint? So I think I will keep this very short, and I want to bring a big shout out to all my sustainable members that are working diligently every day to promote and also to increase the further growth of a good environment and protecting the earth and being careful and caring about the climate and the globe as such. So with that, I think I will just wrap up the presentation. Here are my contact data. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'm happy to talk more about the Data Center Industry Association as well as all of my members. So thank you for attending this session. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bjørn. That was a brilliant presentation. Moving on now to our Q&A session. I'd like to ask you, are data centers a part of the problem or the solution when it comes to sustainability?
I think that from what you saw in the presentation, Sam, I think that what you see how forward-leaning the data center industry is, I think you are quite correct. The data center industry is considered a part of the problem. But if you look at all the efforts that the Norwegian data center members, I would mention the stack infrastructure, I would mention Lefdal Mine, I would mention Green Mountain and bulk infrastructure. They are driving this, and it's I would say it's like an engine that drives the sustainable options, not only for the data center industry, but we see also that the solutions they are developing, they can easily be transferred to other sectors or other industry. So my bold claim is that we are a part of the solution.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any viable heat reuse solutions other than district heating? I.e., or for example, what are the options for data centers in rural areas?
Yeah, so a very good question. So I tried to answer that a little bit during my presentation, but I think that if you look at the data centers in the continental Europe and also in UK, you would see that district heating, that's probably the most viable option if you are located in a rural area. But I would add to that really to get an efficient district heat solution, you need to use heat pumps, and you need to use energy to pump up the heat so it is basically viable for district heat system. So I think that also in urban areas, you as a data center operator should actually look at other solutions that are more efficient. And I think that if you look at what the Norwegian data center players are doing on rural areas, they're looking at fish farming. That's one aspect. Vertical greenhouses. Another area, it's like in Norway now we can grow tomatoes based on heat reuse from and also oranges and citrus fruits based on utilizing the residual heat. So there are several options, and I would say look to Norway once again, and because there's a lot of innovation on alternatives for that. So food production is one of them. I'm certain that there will be coming more as we evolve in the race for sustainability.
Brilliant, thank you. If I were a data center operator, would climate risks be something I should assess when planning my new data center location?
That's an excellent question, and when I'm thinking, I should have added climate risk into my presentation, because I think that what you see now of flood risks or droughts or what have you. You see that's becoming more and more prominent as we move. And looking at flood risk, that's obvious. Why is flood risk? Nobody wants their data center flooded. So you need to be. I would say go back to the slide, one of the last slides, when I say that one of the 3 points you need to assess is the location. So I think that more and more players now must take the location more and more into account and look for areas that are not really exposed to extreme weather conditions. I would also mention drought as a phenomenon, because many of the data centers in warmer climates, they are relying on access to water as a part of the cooling. And if water is becoming a scarce resource, it's not scarce only for the data centers, but also for the population in general. And yes, then I would say also that Norway is probably one of the most protected areas from extreme weather conditions. So I would say that's another point why you should consider Norway as your next location for even for moving your data center load or setting up your new data center.
Fantastic, thank you, Bjørn. That's been really, really insightful. Unfortunately, that is just about all we have time for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and the audience as well. And please do stay tuned to catch more of the action here at Cloud and 5G Live.